The Story That Wrote Itself by A.M. Melfa. Chapter 8. Crawling out of the minutiae of capillaries in his left lung where the memory had been buried, Eustace found himself once more delivered unto the land of papyrus. After exhausting himself on what seemed like an endless round of face-slapping in an attempt to waken himself from this newest nightmare, Eustace gave up and sat down on the crossed-hatched strands. The uninterrupted sameness of the place eventually caused him to start examining the territory with a stronger eye for detail. It was then that Eustace once again noticed the slight horizontal striping of light and shadow that appeared to be the sole variation in his environment. Movement felt oddly disconnected in this place, weirdly vacant. So Eustace experimented by telling his body to turn around. The demonstration proved successful, and it dawned on him that, as before, he was gazing at sentences suspended in midair, running in rigid lines bisecting his field of view. The words themselves were huge, and, interestingly to Eustace, who at this point believed himself to be hallucinating, they were backwards. Straw cab. Reading backwards was not a skill Eustace had ever thought to learn outside in the waking world. Thus it took him some time, sketching with a finger across his palm, to figure out what the words said. He thought it passing curious. What could his subconscious be trying to tell him by trapping him behind the lines of his very own story? Not only that, but as he brachiated his way down the ladder of sentences, rung by rung, he realized that the story had been finished. Incredible! What a strange and compelling dream this was. Eustace arrested his descent and threw his head back as far as he was able, amazed by the never-ending strata of words extending up and up into a limitless top sky. Casting his eyes downward revealed the same giddy vista. With some excitement, it dawned on Eustace that he could hear muffled voices speaking as if from a distant room where the door had been left ajar. Both of the voices seemed quite familiar, one of them surely belonging to his husband, Claude. Straining his sight through the horizontal platform of letters, like looking through cheesecloth, Eustace thought he could see the surface of his writing desk. There was his highlighter pen lying on its side, looking to be the approximate size and shape of a Doric column from the Parthenon. Absently, he noted that his desk was white lacquered, exactly the same as his dying mother's fingernails. Then self-realization barreled down on him like a Peterbilt, and he admitted to himself, "This is the reason why I love lacquer so much." It was the symbol, the tactile essence of his emancipation. Now quite sure that one of the voices belonged to Claude, Eustace reversed direction and hoisted himself laboriously up the vertical face of his story, hoping to catch a glimpse of his beloved's face. The physics of his dreamscape was canted in the most bizarre manner. At any point he could vault out to the side and land soundly on the fibrous firmament of his self-induced mirage. And when it pleased him, he could simply amble over to the rungs of sentences and begin scaling the ladder of his manuscript once more. The only limit he was able to discern was his inability to climb between the lines and thus emerge out onto what he could only assume was the face of the prose. In this perpetual realm of buff, Eustace could not maintain any realistic grip on time. His internal clock was insistent that vast stretches of occasion were ticking past. Weeks, months, perhaps even years were streaming by as he sherpa'd his body up the cliff face of phrases. And at other moments it felt to him as if time had deserted him completely, forgotten him, abandoned him, catapulted his very self and all of its petty machinations into an abyss where time itself was unknown. Wearied beyond endurance, Eustace was just about to give up on mountaineering when he realized he could make out the shape of Claude's face through the sentences of his prison. Now a different voice was talking, one that he at once recognized and did not, and that other face was coming into focus, shouldered up against Claude. It took Eustace some non-existent span of time to realize that the voice and the face belonged to someone he was quite intimate with, someone he should know better than anyone else, someone who was, in fact, himself. Eustace watched with growing horror as his outside-the-page self conversed with his husband about his story. Claude was telling this other Eustace that his novel was nothing short of a masterpiece, truly and actually astounding. After reading the first draft, Claude was convinced that his husband was about to make them both filthy, dripping rich. The Eustace behind the lines looked on with strenuous remorse as the long-coveted bottle of 2016 Domaine de la Romane Cante la Tache was cracked, foaming a glorious tsunami over the rims of his mother's fabulously expensive, obviously seldom used crystal flutes. Gradually the light closed in and reduced itself to the stingiest of slits. Claude and the other Eustace had closed the laptop, yet left it cracked just enough so the sounds of their celebration continued to broadcast into his origami universe. With the clink-clink of congratulations, behind the lines Eustace pushed off from the wall of verse, completing a tuck and roll back onto the invisible yet perfectly planar expanse of his new parchment existence. Pixelated tears tumbled a soft cascade over the curve of his non-existent cheeks, dripping ones and zeros down to dampen the simulated floor of his own personal hell. End of chapter 8.